So welcome everyone. Just delighted for everyone to be here with us today. And my name is Ann Hackett. If anybody doesn't know me, I think I know most everybody here right now. But thank you so much for joining us. At Central Exchange, we're proud to present Spectrum Reach, creating content that connects. And I'd love to take a moment and introduce our speaker today. We have Cherri Ellis, who is a National Creative Strategy Director for Kernel, the internal agency of Spectrum Reach. Her team of strategists and creative professionals provide data-based insights and full creative services so that messaging is on point, assets are impactful, and business goals are met. Cherri has worked in multiple creative arenas: video production, live theater, so that's super exciting, on-camera talent, magazine columnist, and as morning drive personality, Cherri Mason on the top-rated Mason and Dixon morning show. Now, with Spectrum Reach over 18 years and a grateful recipient of multiple industry awards, Cherri finds great joy in working with clients of all sizes. And I love this part. As a huge fan of targeted creative, her favorite quote regarding advertising is from the former Netscape CEO Jim Barksdale, who said, "If you have data, let's look at that. If all we have are opinions, let's go with mine." So I'd love to hear more of how you think about that, Cherri, as well. And with that, before we turn it over to Cherri, I'd love to turn it over to Kelly for a little bit more about Spectrum Reach.
Yeah, thanks, Ann. My name is Kelly, and I'm a field marketing specialist at Spectrum Reach. And at Spectrum Reach, we're advertising experts and your one-stop shop for the best products and ideas to reach anyone, anywhere, on any screen. So at Spectrum Reach, we make local businesses big and big brands look local. We are the most trusted media partner in America, and we happen to be your neighbors. So without further ado, Cherri.
Hi, everybody. How you doing today? Anybody who has the opportunity to be eating lunch at this time, do it on or off camera. I fully support that. I am really excited to be with you today. I am a huge fan of women's organizations. As a creative director, only 11% of creative directors are female. And when you think about that, 51% of the population is female. And so that says to me that we are purchasing the products. I want us to be creating the ads that go along with the products. And so I applaud you for the work that you are doing supporting each other. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share a deck with you today that has some, I think, really interesting insights about content. Don't openly mock me now if I end up showing my, am I shared? Can you see me? Not yet.
There we go.
Are we getting there?
Yep.
Can you see me now?
We got it.
Perfect. Okay, so today I'll go through this deck. We'll talk a little bit about creating content that cuts through the clutter and connects with the people that you're trying to talk to, because things are changing incredibly quickly. I think we would all agree that not only are we in an era that's an unprecedented new normal, but it's not the last new normal we are going to be in. And so it is a very nimble environment that we are working in right now. So today, let's talk about how to just get a little more return on the content that we all work so hard to put out there. And I want to start by talking about the difference in content marketing and advertising. So content marketing is typically described as a marketing approach where you are trying to attract and retain a very specific group of people. And it focuses on creating and distributing content that is, I like to think of it as VCR. It is valuable, it is consistent, and it is relevant. So you do that in order, of course, to, drive profitable consumer action. That's content marketing. Advertising, however, drives profitable consumer action with a clearly paid for, openly sponsored message. You're selling something. You're selling a product, a service, an idea. So here's the deal. Oh, my screen will not proceed. Okay, yes, it did. People love content. People do not, however, love what they perceive to be advertising, but really, really good advertising, advertising that is relevant, that offers value to the consumer. It can be seen as content. It's really all about the message. So it doesn't matter whether it's a paid ad, whether it's a vlog, a blog, a YouTube video. The key to good consumer engagement is offering the customer something of value, and that changes very quickly. And right now, consumers are asking for more out of brands in what they expect. So research right now shows that consumers do want businesses to protect them physically and financially, but they also need them to provide value and ease of purchase. Now is the time for businesses to let people know that they have your back, that they are making it a safe experience for you to be a client, a customer of theirs, but also that they're making it a safe work environment for the people that work for them. People want to know how brands are going to offer them solutions to problems they have right that red hot second, whether it's a problem that they've had for a long time or whether it's a new problem that's a result of the pandemic. So when you think about putting content out, how much do you need? I mean, is more, especially in the social space? Doesn't creating content feel like the ultimate hungry hippo? It seems like you always need more content. Well, believe it or not, the secret to successful strategic content is not producing a huge amount of it. It is developing the correct marketing objective. To develop a good marketing objective, you have to have a very clear and strong strategy. Now, let me stop here. One problem that I see a lot of businesses or marketers run into is that they confuse a business objective with a marketing objective. A business objective is all about the business. It's what the business wants to achieve. The marketing objective supports the business objective, but it's all about the consumer. It's a completely different mindset. So you define your marketing objective by identifying what your business goals are, and then you try to promote and build content that all supports that business objective by answering consumer-based questions. So I like to think of it like this way. Your business objective is to sell more cars, computers, or legal advice. Your marketing objective is going to be focused on how to get the consumer to make the decision to buy your car, computer, legal advice. And you do that by asking the consumer-based questions. Who are you trying to talk to? Who are your prospects? What do you want them to do? When do you want them to do it? What does the consumer want? You want them to buy a car, computer, or legal advice. They want to be mobile or connected or divorced. It's a completely different mindset. So your marketing objective is going to come from the answers to your consumer-based questions. So if we put this on our feet, we can do a marketing objective for a fictitious kickboxing studio. So we're going to go through the who, what, when, where, and why for a fictitious kickboxing studio. Okay, who are we trying to talk to? We are talking to young adults who are interested in health, focused on being physically fit, and live in Sarasota, Florida, and they pull in $55,000 or more a year. What is it we want them to do? We want them to sign up for a 2-week trial membership at our kickboxing studio. When do we want them to do it? By September 1st. Where? Online, kickatsarasota.com. And most importantly, why do we want them to take this action? Well, It's a great value. It typically costs $50. You get to work with this crackerjack team of trainers. You get to work out at a beautiful new state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line studio. And so with those answers, we have our marketing objective. We want to drive young, fitness-oriented adults with a household income of $55K or more in Sarasota to kickatsarasota.com to sign up for the 2-week trial membership at my kickboxing studio by September 1st. So you see how different that is than the business goal of selling more kickboxing memberships. It is very tangible, very specific. So great messaging answers the why or the why not. Because before anybody can do anything, before they can take any action, they first make the decision to take that action. And so really good messaging addresses why or why not. So understanding what drives a consumer to make that decision helps us figure out what we're going to say and how we're going to say it. So what do we know about our consumer right now? We know that whatever their profile was pre-COVID, it has now been completely blown out by COVID, and now their immediate consumer situation takes precedent over the pre-COVID-19 customer profile. Because COVID changed everything. I mean, look at our prospect before COVID. What did we know about them? Well, we knew that they worked out at a gym 3 or more times a week. They took fitness classes on the reg. They ate meals in a restaurant 5 or more times a week. They worked full time. They loved to travel, and they did so 6 or more times a year. They made $55K or more. But how have things changed for them now? Because the first consideration is how they will have been impacted. Well, I mean, let's think about it. They have not been going to the gym. They have not been participating in fitness classes, at least not in person. They have not been dining out or traveling with their typical frequency. Have they lost their job? Are they working? Are they working from home? Can they work from home? Are they working but at a reduced income because of lost commission? What is their specific situation right now? And most importantly, even as things do start to go back to normal, how do they feel about resuming their old routines? Well, I'll tell you how they feel. They feel how you feel. They feel apprehensive. All of the research is indicating that people are not going to dive back into their old routines that were so typical before. Instead, they're going to ease back into the routines. People are still worried about getting sick or having health issues. 34% of them consider that to be a top 10 stressor. People are uncertain. They're uncertain about the economy. They're uncertain about their life routines. There's a higher incidence of people feeling overwhelmed or depressed. And so just remember that it's not going to be like you flip a light switch. People are going to ease back into what life was before. Because remember, consumers expect value, right? And they expect value that's relevant to their situation. So now, right this red hot second, your messaging has to take those fundamental changes in consumer behavior and keep it front of mind. So the shifts in consumer behavior fall into 4 basic categories right now. Number 1, there's a shift to people's values and what they consider to be essential. Up to 40% of customers are spending less on discretionary categories. Number 2, there's a flight to online spending. Up to 40% completely intend on continuing the shopping habits that they have developed during this era. Number 3, there has been a massive shock to brand loyalty. Your favorite brands may have gone out of business. They may have completely shifted how they do business, completely different operating procedures. If you're worried about your finances, you might get a different brand in something that is not a name brand, a coat that is off brand that will still keep you warm. There's been a massive shock to loyalty, which can be an advantage. And 4th it's a homebody mentality right now. People are nesting, people are staying home, people are working on their spaces, whether they're working from home. I mean, how many home offices have now been built? People are making their home more comfortable because they're spending more time there. So with these shifts in consumer behavior, you want to keep those changes in mind. So there's a lot of different nuanced stages in the buyer's journey, right? You guys have probably all seen everything from a selling funnel to a selling journey, but the three big points in it are awareness, consideration, and decision-making. So your creative serves you in different ways along that journey. And what this research shows us is at the beginning of your buyer's journey, the awareness stage, what are the buyer's challenges and goals? At the beginning of the awareness stage, you need to know how that buyer is getting their information. How are they getting the information to solve the problems that they have? How are they educating themselves on solutions to their problems? How are they prioritizing their goals? So with awareness, you see here, they are suggesting more informational advertising, a broad reach with a lot of information to break through the clutter and make people aware of what you have. Moving on to the consideration phase, you can see that you can get into slightly more narrative storytelling, because your goal at this point is to show them all the ways that you are the solution to their problem, right? How beneficial you're going to be to them, your product or your service, how you can help them. You also, at this point, want to make sure during the consideration phase that you are letting them know how much better you are than the competitors. By the time you get to the decision-making phase, you can see that the messaging has switched from informational messaging to more of a narrative storytelling messaging. You've already broken through. They're already aware of what you offer. They're developing, even before they purchase, a tiny bit of brand loyalty to you. So at this point, you want to educate less and you want to inspire and promote more. This is the time when you can really influence them by messaging that resonates with them. This is the time to tell a story. You can also do shorter edits of some of your earlier stuff because that recall has already started to take hold. So now you get to the decision-making spot. It's time to tell a story, but it has got to be a story that is relevant. You have to offer value to a consumer. You got to focus on what they want to know, even if that changes very quickly, not what you want to tell them. Okay, this next slide, it's always my favorite slide. It's my favorite thing. Once somebody said this to me, it has stuck my entire life. And what you want to do is you have got to tell the story your customer wants to hear, not the story you want to tell them. Think about that. I own an Italian restaurant. I learned to make the best marinara sauce in the entire world at my grandmother's knee. I come from a family of restaurateurs. That might be what inspires me to go in and flip the lights on every day. But does that make somebody want to eat there? Nobody turns to their husband and says, honey, I'm really craving something family owned and operated for dinner. What I want to know is a reason why I want to eat there. So if you take nothing else away from today, remember to tell the story your customer wants to hear, not the story you want to tell. So you got three factors in play, right? You got the consumer, you have your business, and you have the market. So the best creative messaging comes in finding where those three entities overlap. Start with the consumer. In fact, just always start with the consumer. Like when you're dancing, always start with your right foot. Always start your thought processes for content marketing with the consumer. What is the story they want to hear? What is making them make purchases? What motivates them? How do they feel? What is that why or why not that you need to answer? Moving on to the business, What are the brand points of your business that intersect those consumer needs? How can you be a hero to the consumer? How can you solve a problem for them? How can you meet a need for them? How can you provide an experience that they need? Lastly, look at the market. What's going on in the market? Markets are changing as quickly as businesses are. Is there something happening in the market that's going to impact either the consumer or the business or the community? So you find those connection points between the consumer, the business, and the market, and that is what's going to support a really strong message. Next up, I know you all know this, but don't be tone deaf. Wasn't that a zippy animation? That was lots of fun to look at. You can't ever be tone deaf, but now more than ever, you have got to strike the right tone. People are struggling. If somebody is kind enough to take in your content, then you offer them something of value. You show empathy. You acknowledge where they are right now in their struggle financially or intellectually. Bring them something that matters to them. Be helpful. Tell them how you're going to solve a problem for them. Be safety minded. You've got to let people know both sides of that, how you're going to keep them safe if they come in to buy your bagels, but also how you're changing your standing operating procedures so that your employees are safe. People want to make sure that people are taken care of. And while you're being considerate and helpful and safety minded, you got to do it in your brand voice. Whenever there's a lot of panic, when there's something big that goes on like that, people tend to be reactive and they can inadvertently change their brand voice. So you want to always speak in the voice of your brand, but you want to highlight ways that you are changing your company to match the circumstances around you. You have to address their concerns, but do it in your voice. Next up, we thought about business objectives. We thought about marketing objectives. We thought about shifting behaviors. Where's your video going to play? Content needs to be developed for each platform. People behave differently depending on where they watch a video. So you have to first look at where your consumer is consuming your content. So where we watch it makes a difference in how we watch it, how or whether we engage with it, how we react to it, how we take any action afterwards. Gone are the days of creating a snippet of video and then just putting it everywhere. Remember when we all first started doing content, all you had to do was just get something and then you just put it on every platform that you could. But now you need to make sure that your creative is balanced with your media. I mean, think about it. That makes sense. Online videos usually watched without audio. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, almost always watched vertically. 90% of handheld devices are watched in portrait mode. So knowing where the content is going to be seen before it's creative is going to matter. So let's talk about some of the best practices, do's and don'ts by platform. Now, I'm a big fan of video. Everybody knows I'm a big fan of video. I am a geek about video. I talk about it all the time. Video delivers the most amount of information in the least amount of time, and it has the highest recall. And that is why marketers everywhere are using video in so many ways outside of their advertising. So video is not always the answer, though. When you pick your platform, where are we going to start? We're going to start with the audience, because content marketing, remember, completely driven by consumers. So where are they engaging? What is the best format for your actual message? Is it a story that needs to be told using video? Is it information that's going to be most easily digested as an infographic? Is it maybe a white paper or an article about the industry, not just your business, but the industry, that by providing that information to people, you're establishing your expertise? Whatever the best fit is, use it, because a strong message can be shared using a variety of formats. So you look at the connection points between where people are consuming the content, what format is the best way to achieve that message, and of course, our marketing objective. So visual-based messages like infographics can be shared on multiple platforms, but they're going to do best on visually based platforms like Instagram over a text platform like Twitter. Video is such a powerful content format, and so it needs to be developed based on where it's going to be seen. So let's start with TV. TVs are big. Big, big, big. So use that to your advantage. Make a big visual impact. You want to avoid saying too much. Viewers typically are only able to take away 3 things from a commercial, so you really have to focus on what you want them to remember. I do an awful lot of voice work, and I am telling you, for the most hard driving, hard sell automotive spot, you're not going to get more than 90 words in a 30-second spot. So choose your copy points very wisely. The basics. Stay away from seasonal shots. You don't want Christmas decorations in the background of your summer ad. Try to avoid wide panning or really distant shots. A lot of time business owners are so proud of their physical location that they want to show every square inch of their business, but those wide panning shots tend to not engage the viewer and pull them in. So unless your copy point is about specifically how much of something you have, just avoid those wide panning shots. They really don't have a strong return for you. And you got to have a strong call to action. Nobody's going to do anything unless you ask them to do it. So always, always have one that maybe has a little extra urgency with act now or save today. And when you do that, when you create your sense of urgency, make sure that you are mindful that that might limit the shelf life of an ad. You know how, haven't you ever seen on TV somebody saying, you know, now Saturday, but it's airing on Sunday, or somehow they are running late creative? Don't make that mistake. Video don'ts for TV. Just don't be cliche. Everybody has good service, friendly staff, big selection. Try to avoid superlatives, best, you know, greatest, unless you have a trophy sitting there from an industry organization that has awarded you something. Don't mention it. You got to stay away from statements that can't be proven. But the one thing that you want to do is talk about what makes you different. What is your distinctive differentiator of your business? That is what is going to stand out. So those are some good do's and don'ts for TV. Moving on to online video. Man, it's all about beating that skip button. You know, you have to grab attention so quickly in a skippable ad environment. You have 5 seconds, and that is a fairly old stat. That is a stat from 2016 by Myriad, and it shows that 90% of people skip a pre-roll ad after 5 seconds. Well, that was 2016. You think our attention span's getting longer? Probably not. So the shorter, the better. Online ads are a great time to use humor. It's a great way to beat that skip button, because you can set up your premise or set up your joke and then do the payoff or the punchline on the 6th second, and you have beaten the skip button. Don't create a pre-roll ad longer than 15 seconds. Just don't. And online, the call to action cannot be overstated, because you got to beat the skip button. Well, that puts you into second 6. Well, now you got to have a call to action, or there's no action behind what you're asking people to do. So you have to be very clear, very concise. And finally, make sure you're following IAB standards so that your video will roll where it needs to roll. Next, let's talk about social media video. You got to know if it needs to be square. Don't fall into auto crop. You're going to cut heads off. The most important thing about social video is that it has to work equally well with or without sound. People sneak watch social video all the time. How many times have you watched a video in the doctor's office while you're waiting to be called back, or at the end of a long all-day meeting? So you have to make sure you either include text or captions or closed captions so that your video in social media will work equally well with or without sound. Okay. I've been talking forever. I feel like we've touched on business objectives, marketing objectives, platform, format. Now let's talk about how to grow your audience. So we're going back to those 3 stages: awareness, consideration, and decision-making. And really, this chart that looks like a whale, basically what it is telling us is start wide. That awareness stage, remember we said we're going to start wide and frequent and give it time. Commercials start becoming effective anywhere between 5 and 15 weeks, depending on the media activity in that category. I mean, is there a lot of clutter? Is there a lot of competition? It's essential to maintain the high reach at which the campaign was launched. But then once you get down to the decision-making part, you can go to shorter edits because you've already gotten a little bit of progress in that awareness section. Shorter edits and storytelling works beautifully at the end because they're already aware of you. Now you want to resonate with them. So you can go to shorter edits and more creative narrative-based messaging. Now we can get creative, which is so funny because I've been talking forever and only now are we talking about how to be creative. And that's exactly backwards of how a lot of times people work, because they're like, we need content. How many times have you guys been told, oh, just get creative. Just bring me some creative ideas. We'll start there. Well, really, that's kind of one of the last things that you're going to want to do. You got to put that front work in. But once it is time to get creative, that's kind of like being told, be funny. You know, what does that even mean? How do you know you're coming up with a strong creative idea that's based on data that's going to resonate with your consumer? You've got to, first of all, when you're going to be creative, decide what kind of creative you're trying to do. Are you going with the informational content, or are you trying to be narrative and tell a story? So I think we've touched on this, but for informational content, you know, if it's a complicated product or service or a product launch, a very concise, clear, informational based video is going to be the best way to communicate that to your consumer. But if you're developing your brand, if you're trying to build an emotional connection with your consumer, a narrative storytelling approach is going to be better. It also is affected by how frequently the consumer is going to be exposed to your content. The more information-based content is, the faster it's going to wear out. Think about it. You only watch the news once, because once you watch the news and you have that information, there's no reason to watch it again. But how many times have you watched the one where Chandler goes to Yemen to avoid Janice? You know, people love stories, even stories that they have heard before, they will re-enjoy in a genuine way. Lastly, develop your story within your limitations. People who work in creative arenas are constantly told, think outside the box. Oh, just get creative, think outside the box. But really what you need to do is think inside the box. You need to know your parameters, whether it's timeline or budget or inventory, before you develop that story. That is why we've had such fantastic creative come out of this pandemic. People are producing car commercials using little toy cars in their driveways. People are doing amazing work in the creative arena right now. A painter can only paint to the edge of the frame, so know your limitations and think inside the box. Now, your content's not going to be remembered if it doesn't get noticed to start with. So your content has to be memorable to resonate. So how do you do that? Well, here's 3 things. Number 1, turns out your mom was right. You only get 1 chance to make a first impression. So how do you want your brand to introduce itself? You want your brand to make eye contact and cross the room and have a firm handshake and make me as a consumer feel seen. You only have 1 chance to make a great first impression. Number 2, you have got to break through the clutter. And let me tell you, there is a lot of clutter out there, and there's going to be more every day. How can you avoid just being more white noise? So according to venturebeat.com, Google serves how many ads a day? Just pick a number. What do you think the number is that Google serves every day? Well, the answer is every day they serve 30 billion ads. 30 billion ads. That means the average consumer is exposed to 5,000 ads every day of their life. So you're not going to get remembered unless you break through and get noticed. Finally, never skimp on the quality. Everything I know about your brand, I know because of your content. So if you cut corners on content, if you don't use a professional voiceover, or you do something that obviously you cheaped out on, it reflects on your brand in a very direct way. It makes me wonder, they didn't hire a voiceover artist. What other corners are they cutting? I bet it's not really real butter in their cookies. I mean, it just casts aspersion on you. So never forget that quality is always top of mind. So content is really, really powerful. If you approach it with a front-loaded process, like we talked about, knowing your business objective, knowing your marketing objective, taking the platform, the format, the type of messaging, the prospect in mind, it will build your brand and it will grow your business. I will stop sharing now. I bet everybody's sick of hearing my voice. There you go. Does anybody have any questions about any of that content before we go on to any other subjects?
Feel free to just openly ask some questions, and certainly chat's open too if you prefer that. But super interesting. And, you know, I kind of keep thinking about things like audiences. I'll start with a question. Sorry, I'm just kind of chiming in here, Cherri. But, you know, when I think about, you talked a little bit about different formats, you know, Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. How much do you think about the demographics of those users? You know, you talked about like what fits, you know, visually and things, but do you do a lot of thought about, you know, who uses Facebook? Where do people go? Is that a lot of your consideration, or?
So on my team, we are so into data-based information that we have a whole separate crew that brings us a fantastic amount of information about who our audience is, who we are talking to. So, you know, remember my favorite quote, if you have data, let's go with data. If all you have is opinion, let's go with mine. So I always take into consideration any information I can get on the audience. If anybody has any other questions, I want to hear them. But if you want to talk about one of my favorite things to talk about, it is how to be creative, because you as business owners and marketers are constantly being tasked with being creative. Does anybody have any best practices or any questions they have about that process? Because when you watch Mad Men, it looks like everybody gets in a room and everybody just leaves with a campaign, you know? I have 2 favorite theories on that. Does anybody have a theory on that they want to share, or you want to hear mine? Okay. Okay, I know you want to hear this. I have 2 favorite theories on how to create creative thought, basically. And one is from Scott Barry Kaufman. He is a very, very smart man. He is the scientific director of the Imagination Institute at the Positive Psychology Center at the University of Pennsylvania. So neurologically, he says that our brain goes through 4 very distinct phases. to generate creative thought. Those phases are preparation, incubation, illumination, and verification, which is also fun to say. So you start with preparation, very front-loaded process. What you want to do is get your team together and give them all of the information they could possibly need to know about your project. What's the client done before? Who are the stakeholders? What are the internal or external political applications of what you're doing? What has worked for them in the past? What are their biggest considerations? Everything you could possibly want to know about that project, you just download onto your team, and then you cut it off. You go into the second phase, which is incubation, which is a phase that allows your brain to work on a problem without your conscious intervention. And so you have all of the information, you stick it inside your brain, you go on to another task, or you take a walk, and eventually little connections start happening, little neurons start firing, and you get what feels like an idea, which is the third part of the process, which is illumination. That's what feels like you're getting a great idea. So this is what's so cool about that. You pull your team back together and everybody brings their ideas. You have fewer ideas, but they are better grounded, anchored ideas. And at that point, you go all the way back to the beginning of that process. And you're in the final phase, which is verification, which means you run all of those ideas that people brought back to you, and you run it through that initial marketing objective to see which one is going to be the most effective for you. That is a way that I love doing brainstorms. My second theory that I love on that is from John Cleese. Like John Cleese, you know, A Fish Called Wanda, you know, Monty Python. And he gets asked all the time how he is creative. And he decided, you know, there are some things that I have to have in order to be my best as a creative professional. And they are time, space, safety, and humor. Time, because you have to schedule time with yourself to be creative. You cannot rely on inspiration hitting you when you're in the middle of the grocery store. It's fabulous when that happens, but you cannot make your living hoping that it does. So number one, time. Number two, time again. Time, because you need to determine how long you're going to work on a problem before you allow yourself to move on to something else. John Cleese says nothing requires more than an hour and a half. After that, people just wilt. Whether it's 45 minutes or an hour and a half, you stick with it until then, because that gets you to push past that low-hanging fruit and brings you into better ideas. Third, time, you got to have space. This is super important with so many of us working from home. You create a workspace for yourself and you honor that space as a workspace. It signals your brain that it is time to shift into creative, productive thought. Number four is safety. And this is my favorite, because safety is your team. You have got to work with people in front of whom you can wildly fail. If you are not working with a team in front of whom you can just crash and burn, then you are not on the right team. You have to have safety. You better be throwing out ideas that aren't good, because that's how you get to the ones that are. So time, space, safety, and last is humor. You have to have humor in the process of creativity. You will not always deal with subject matter that is humorous, but the process of creating your content can be. We are so fortunate to work in an arena where we're able to use both sides of our brain. So we're not curing cancer for children. The process of coming up with creative thought should be fun. It should be something you enjoy.
Cherri, you didn't mention Fawlty Towers, which is my favorite John Cleese show, even though it's short, but it's hilarious. It's like a comedy of errors. So
I've not seen it.
Oh yeah, you would like it. It's old school.
Fawlty Towers?
Fawlty Towers, yeah. Yeah, he owns a hotel and just everything goes wrong. And so if you like that kind of comedy, it's really funny.
I think he is widely regarded as a comedic genius. I'm not even a Monty Python fan, but you got to give it to them for the strides they have made.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah. Do you agree with me on your team being safe? Haven't you ever been on a team where you didn't feel safe to throw ideas out? It's a horrible work experience. Horrible. But if you are with people that you can just take an idea as far past what is a good interpretation of it, that is a wonderful arena to dance in.
I was thinking about what you were saying about that time of not directly thinking about the outcome. I have taken this course, it's called Learning How to Learn, and it talks about how to learn better. And it was talking about how, walking away from something, you usually come up with the solution is, talks about how a lot of times people, and I thought I was unique in this, but I can go to sleep on a problem and wake up with a solution. And it's pretty common because your brain is still working while you're not consciously focusing on that. And I think that sort of speaks to the need to always be driven, but to give yourself that space, like you said, that quiet time, in order to just let things sort of organically come together. And also the safe group, I think, is really good because a lot of times, even if something's a ridiculous idea, people can build off of it. There's some sort of tangential thing that sparks something else that you probably, I guess that's the benefit of a team is synergy, the gestalt you get with a team rather than an individual.
I think it's really hard. Thank you so much for those 2 points. I totally agree with you, but it's really hard sometimes to let go of a project because we all have more work than we can possibly do, right? I mean, nobody's sitting around getting, neck massages at their desk these days. Everybody is juggling multiple projects, and it's really hard to lay something down and come back to it. But if you can allow yourself the freedom to do that, I do think that you're going to have better creative thought afterwards. What was the course you took, Learning to Learn?
Yeah, Learning How to Learn. It's a Coursera course. It's really amazing. It talks to you about how you can actually, you were talking about videos, and I like the visual representation. It talks about making mind maps of what you're thinking about, and then you can look at the connections. But I want to say one other thing when you were talking about creativity. I think also one of the key things within the group is not only safety, but a component of that is, to me, is trust. So that when people, you get the revolutionary idea, you make it that everybody shares in the kudos or whatever, instead of you worrying about who's going to land grab your idea and take credit for your efforts. And I think we've all experienced it, but I think when people do that, you sort of hold back, right? Somebody's gonna, take your creation and put their rubber stamp on it. So I think there has to be trust and shared glory. It doesn't make yours less because you're sharing it. I think it actually makes it more, because a key part is developing those relationships and, being someone that people feel safe with working with, that you're going to work towards the benefit of the team and the goal of whatever it is you're working towards.
Oh, it's your ideas though. It's hard because you come up with an idea and it feels like your baby. And then somebody comes in and says, we'll animate it. And you're like, no, you don't want people infringing on what you think is a brainstorm. So the safety of your team is such an important aspect. Somebody here, Madison, says, how do you feel about the 8-hour day work structure? Oh, I'm probably the last person to ask about this because I am a little bit obsessive, I think. And so I tend to work in bursts of creativity. And so all of you are professional women. How many times have you walked into your office or grabbed a pad of paper at 9:30 at night or something when an idea comes to you? Everybody's going, mm-hmm. And so I tend to roll with it when the ideas come. The 8-hour workday, it has been my experience that people working from home, and I'd love to hear your opinions on this. I think people are working more. People are not working less, they're working more because that work-life boundary is just a little bit fuzzier now. I think there's fantastic work coming out of the work from home model. I'm not sure that there won't be permanent changes in that area across certain sectors or certain industries or maybe sections of companies. But I think it's personally been wonderful. It's been a wonderful opportunity.
I think for me, I've had to be very conscious about walking away from work. It's not that it's not playing in the background, because I think I'm always, if I'm passionate about what I'm doing, it's always playing in the background. But I also realize that I need to shut the door on the computer, because you can end up, being on your computer, working on your work, and you're not seeing everybody leave. So you're not getting that signal, and you can keep going, and it can, I just speak for myself, can get really unbalanced. So I have to say, okay, I set up alarms around my house to tell me, okay, it's time to quit. And I may think about it, but I walk out of the room, I shut down the computer and have my list of other things that I need to do. Like, okay, you need to talk to one friend a day. I don't care, you've got to be balanced.
Right. I have to activate my brain in another way before I will let things go, or else I will walk out of the office, but my mind will stay in the office. That is a challenge that I have. It's a good challenge. I love my work. And so I could probably have better work-life boundaries. Probably everybody could.
I was just going to build a little bit on something that you said, Linda, and Cherri, this kind of speaks to the various models, but you were talking about the incubation. I think, Linda, you were kind of talking about that, you sleep on something and, sort of comes clear. I think those models of creativity that you're talking about, Cherri, are so important, because I normally think of creativity as let's go brainstorm, and that's a very small component of it. So it's kind of helpful to think about that incubation. And one thing that this conversation has got me thinking about is our maybe lack of ability to do the incubation in this sort of work from home, always glued to Zoom, kind of thing. And, how do we make space for that in this time and in the future? Is it doing things like going for walks in the middle of the day, conference calls with walks, or just something to free our mind? So it's got me kind of thinking about that incubation component and maybe trying to do more of it.
I think of it as like the release is harder. Like, I doubt anybody on this call, nobody has to make you guys work. I'm sure it's not hard to get anybody on this call where, look, you're using your lunch to better yourself right now. What's hard is to release. Like when you're effectively interviewing somebody on camera, I used to keep my notebook and I'd scribble, like they'd say something and I'd have a follow-up question and I'd write it down. But really, if you can release and you can allow thoughts and questions and subjects to come and go, it activates a completely different part of your brain and your personality. That's hard to do, isn't it? It's hard to trust yourself to just turn loose.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Cherri, I have a question for you. And I kind of maybe want to get your insight on this. I'm actually presenting a TV and streaming media campaign to a solar company here, actually, in about an hour. I'm putting together. So you said something really important, because they already do, and most solar companies, we've done some research on our end too, to kind of find out what they're doing heavy in, and a lot of them, digital advertising is kind of their go-to. So you don't find a lot doing any type of commercials, or really even streaming like online video. And you talked about the different formats. And what perked up their ears to even get this presentation was me, name dropping HGTV, right? And some of our top networks that would probably suit their industry, because nobody is really tapping into that right now. And you talked about being able to add value to that, like telling their story of what they want to hear versus what I want to sell them on, right?
Right.
And so you've made some good points. And I don't know. I wouldn't say, I'd like to think I'm a creative person, but I also feel like that's an area that I like to get better at, because I would love to be able to come with some more ideas for these commercials. You talked about the different formats, the 3 things, especially with like a commercial, what they need to focus on. And I think their online videos on social media, you talked about not having audio. I didn't even think about that, because I never listen with audio. So they're probably missing a good portion of their audience, not even listening to like the information that they're trying to give to educate people on the benefits of alternative energy. So I just didn't know if maybe you've come across anything like this, where maybe a customer is more heavy on the digital side and we're trying to get them to see the value of TV, because it's still the #1 platform for awareness.
That's right.
So,
first of all, you are going to crush your presentation.
I hope so. I've been trying to get this client for a while.
Talking about it, I can already tell that you are ready, you are grounded, walk in there and have a big time with it. When in doubt, I would always look at what makes them different. What makes them different? They're doing mostly digital. Well, digital is usually a pretty short format, so they can't really do anything educational about them. So you can't really go into deep, what makes solar work for you, or how long it takes to install it, or things that people don't know about it. And so I think that you can pull up all sorts of stuff, whatever it is that makes them different. Then think about ways that you can do that. Like long form would be amazing for.
Yeah, that's
like
what I was thinking.
Because people don't really know a lot about that. I know that it's supposed to save me money on my electric bill, right?
Yeah,
but I don't know how. So
yeah,
good luck.
exactly. And this company does a great job as far as just even like their digital presence. And they've even got a calculator on their homepage for you to put your electric bill, and it will show you over time of what that is going to save. And just small things like that makes it very interacting with the consumer. So, but no, you gave me some really good points to add to my presentation, and so I just didn't know if there was anything else. But yeah, I appreciate it.
You will do so beautifully on that.
Thank you.
That topic too.
Something to that, Lori.
Yeah,
I think I worked with UPS and developed their consultative selling. And I know you're going to go in with a lot of your great ideas, and everything you're doing is spot on. But I think one of the things that a lot of people don't do is, when you're in there making your sales pitch, to really give them a opportunity to inform you of what they feel they do well and what they think they have the opportunity, and then circle back based on the information that they give you, and then do like a sub presentation in your response to them, like you've given that. And I think, one, it really shows that you're listening, which a lot of people, when they come in and sell you something, they're so scripted, they're like really to you, and they show that you have that capability and they're listening, and that you're really trying to partner with them, zeroing in on what their needs are. I think that gives you, a couple of rungs up.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Put on the spot. I completely agree with what you just said. You can always come back. You can always come back. But when somebody pins you down and needs definitive answers right then, you usually end up kind of backing yourself in a corner.
Yeah.
And so don't feel like you have to come up with a song and dance right then. You can come back with beautifully executed storyboards or all sorts of fully developed ideas at a later date.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
and
you want somebody to know that they thought about what you said or not, or shooting from the hip. So, you know, a lot of times, like you said, we think we have to respond immediately, but don't you feel better about someone who pauses and gives something some thought before they answer you?
Yeah.
Because then it doesn't feel so scripted.
Yeah.
And then when you can see the input you gave them in their answer, it gives them so much more credibility.
The uncomfortable pause, as we all
Right.
call it. Yeah, especially in sales and being on video. It's so
Yeah.
much easier, I feel like, maybe in person than video, but it is what it is.
Well,
So
Absolutely.
And Lonnie, I wanted to say too, a lot of the times what I've found recently is, what does the consumer say? What do their customers say? Because I find that sometimes the best selling point comes from the customer saying, hey, I like this about your business, or I didn't know it was so fast or so easy to set up, or sometimes that's where that punchline comes in, is just from getting the response. And then that can lead to even an idea.
yeah, and using that also within my conversation.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly.
I'll take the screen for me. I'm screenshotting.
Voice of the customer is always huge.
Yeah.
Well, I want
I
to thank you.
appreciate
Yeah, I love this, and it's kind of like in the moment coaching too. So that's really terrific. Getting ready for all of our various presentations and meetings and so forth. So Cherri, I want to thank you so much, and Spectrum Reach, I want to thank you so much for today's presentation. And in conclusion, I would just say, check out the Central Exchange calendar. We have a lot of really cool stuff coming up in April. We've got a transgender series. We've got a courageous conversation series. We've got some executive education, longer programming that everyone can take advantage of. So there's a ton of stuff out there for April and May. The year's really filling up and shaping up and looking great. So again, thank you so much. Cherri, thank you everyone, and have a fabulous day.
You guys were a delight. Thank you.
Thank you for having this. Wonderful.
Very fun.